Thanks for joining us this week on the show. I know you're going to enjoy my conversation today with Nurse Jenn Johnson, author of the new book, Nursing Intuition. She has in this, I think, a wonderful love letter to nurses early in their career, students, graduates, nurses who understand the power of their intuition or can be open to it, and lessons for resilience and ways to thrive in the demanding world of nursing. Such a great conversation, lots of wonderful insights, a little bit of frank medical talk. So perhaps not for every audience if you're a little sensitive to these topics. But when it comes to honoring your intuition and avoiding burnout, there's so many gems in this conversation. Thanks for joining us.
It's time to flip the script on stress and learn how to thrive today and throughout your days. Join me for inspiration and interviews with folks who are shining their light in the world in the areas of positive mindset, health, and well-being. I'm your host, Susie Vine. Let's get happified.
Welcome back. I am thrilled to have you with us today for a conversation that I know you're going to get a lot out of. And if you have nurses or first responders in your life, they are too. I'm thrilled to welcome this week Jenn Johnson, RN. She is a senior nurse with more than a decade and a half of experience and the author of the coming out right now book, Nursing Intuition: How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career. This book is a lifeline for healthcare professionals, offering strategies to harness the often overlooked power of intuition in the high-stress environment of nursing. Jenn has a family. She is still nursing. She is birthing this book. We're thrilled to say it is coming out at the top of the lists on Amazon. And I get her for a little bit of time here on the show. Jenn, thanks for making time to join me.
Oh my God, Susie, thank you so much for having me.
We've already been laughing before we started the conversation because I am a nurse's daughter. And as I shared with Jenn before we went live, there's a reason I have a podcast about stress. And it's because I sat front row and I saw how it lands on people and how it ripples out, how it affects them, their health, the family who loves them. And when I heard about Jenn and the book that she has created, I said, yes, this is a message that needs to come out. And I have had another person on the show prior who has spoken to nursing and burnout. I'll have that episode linked in the show notes. And it's always an important conversation. And this book has a spin on it because not only is Jenn looking at the cost of the physical, emotional, psychological cost of nursing, showing up the way that nurses do, which I think we all know. We don't have to be family to know how much nurses show up and save the day. Sorry, doctors, but it's truth.
I'm dying.
That's what we're here
I'm
for.
I'm dying. So my sister-in-law is a family doc and truly is so brilliant. And so her and I kind of get chit-chatting, and sometimes I have to watch my mouth when I talk. The emerge is very, very different from family medicine and working in a nursing home, and what the docs, their level of accountability at that end, it's just so different. So sometimes I have to just watch my P's and Q's just a little bit because my ego gets a little rampant sometimes.
And I'll say too, so I record in the US, Jenn lives in Canada, so different health system, but a lot of this is the same. I really think in education, unfortunately, I know this is true for doctors, they don't really hide it. I think it's true for nurses too. They kind of bake stress into the education, thinking it's going to be a stressful field. This is, make or break time. You just have to suck it up, Buttercup. Unfortunately, we have a whole field of people who are trained to take on the stress and not feel like they can look for help and support. So I love the approach you're taking with this book, looking at intuition and taking better care of yourself and honoring the messages that your body and your psyche are sharing with you. Can you tell us, in the midst of all that you do as a nurse and a mom and a wife, how did you come to be writing as well?
Well, something called a little global pandemic. It happened to a few of us here, there, and everywhere. And so when the pandemic started, I was full-time in the ER and thinking that I was going to do it all and it was going to be fine and trying to hide the stress of it all for my kids and stuff like that. But when everything shut down, so did the daycares. And so my 4 and 5-year-old at the time were home 24/7. And I was also working full time. So I had to swap to straight nights. So working the continental schedule, which is like 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, three off, back and forth. And, I'd be up all day and then stay up all night at work and then stay up all day and then stay up all night and then stay up all day. And you very quickly figure out that sleep is essential and that sleep deprivation is a method of torture for sure. And it accelerates any sort of burnout, depression, anxiety symptoms that you had before, and it just amplifies them by 10. So all of a sudden, I found myself completely overwhelmed, and we couldn't count on family for help. It was just my husband and I and the 2 kids, and he was essential also. So he had to go to work Monday to Friday. So it was just an absolute gong show, a complete free for all. And then we had attorneys coming forward to be like, thank you so much to our frontline workers. We'd like to do your wills for free. And I'm going, pardon? I'm like, I understand you guys are like really trying to like help and volunteer what's going to be the most helpful in any given situation. And I talk about death continually. But, so if we weren't really sold on the fact that we were not expected to survive before, man, that's really hitting home now that, oh, okay, even the attorneys don't expect us to survive. So, that kind of weighs on you also to then go, oh, okay, well, this is why everybody's finally so nice and so appreciative because they don't expect us to live.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny how it took a pandemic for people to say, thank you to our medical workers.
God.
Thank you.
To stop hitting and to stop spitting and to stop cussing me out in every single language. It was actually really kind of unhinged because it's been 16 years in the ER. I'm very comfortable with the aggression and understanding people who are scared and they're not sure what's going to go on and there's anxiety and is my life going to end today kind of fear. And so, you give that to any one regular person that's going to push them over the edge. So there's a lot of understanding that comes from nursing staff that they don't really mean this. This isn't coming from a place of hatred of me. It's just they're not coping. And this is just the one way that they're kind of like letting off a little bit of steam. So to a point, we let a lot of people get away with a lot because we're just so used to it. But when people started saying thank you and so much food would show up, like I actually stopped bringing lunches and dinners because there was so much food all the time. And then you're like, are we allowed to share this? It's not an individual like portions. I don't, We're all like, well, if one of us is getting it, we're all getting it because we're so close. So don't worry about it. We're fine. And so we just hopped along and you did what you had to kind of get everything going. I think it was July, August. I really hit the end of my wits. Thankfully, things were starting to open up again, but we weren't quite there. And it was just one of these things where, something's got to give. I'm absolutely going nuts. And so the Canadian government gave all frontline healthcare workers $5,000 who worked full time as a thank you and we appreciate you and all this kind of stuff. Still was taxed heavily. We got maybe 2,200 out of that. I'm like, what's going to be the craziest thing that I can spend this on? And so a buddy of mine actually has like psychic classes. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take psychic classes. I'm just going to go nuts with this. And so in finally spending that weird amount of time on myself, I was like, okay, there's obviously stuff that needs to come up. And so started writing the really good stories for my kids. Because if I don't make this, how do you explain to kids that mom chose to continue to go to work, even though there was all this evidence of people dying everywhere that really showed us that we probably shouldn't be showing up. And I'm like, okay, so I'll write down the good stories. And very quickly, the really rough, traumatic crap came flying right out afterwards. And I sat back after a couple stories came out and I'm like, okay, what is this all going to do with each other? I don't understand why this is all coming up now. And looking at the stories, every single one of them had an element of I trusted my gut or I didn't, or I said something and I was either believed or I wasn't. And it was just this thread of intuition that wove itself through every single story. And I'm going, okay, I know that we talk about it at 3 a.m. when we're joking around and there's some ghost stories and we're trying to keep things lighthearted. And the theory of trust your gut comes up all the time. I just had this gut sense. I just had the sixth sense. I had the spidey sense. I just didn't know. But my gut was saying, all these different variations of the exact same thing where you knew that something was not going right. And it's our job to advocate for our patients. So you can take it to your doc and say, hey, I just don't know what's going on. I just need you to come and take another look at Mrs. Smith and come and see what you think about it. And so I'm like, okay, well, if this is the idea that is coming out of this, how do I, in this age of misinformation and disinformation, because as things were progressing, everything was falling apart even further. And I said, well, I can't bring this forward without losing my license potentially if I don't have a lot of science behind this. And so I went on a deep dive of all the sciencey things. And not only is there so much information on intuition, but specifically intuition in nursing. And I'm going, oh my God, there's so much science and it's all new science and it's all up to date and it's all peer reviewed. I'm like, they tell us in nursing school, if it's science-based, we should be teaching. I'm like, okay, if somebody's going to fall on this axe, it's going to be me. Let's just do it. So the beginning parts of kind of an intro and what nursing intuition feels like and all this kind of took form and the stories just fell into place. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Now let's do it. And the more people I talk to about it and open up myself about it, they go, oh yeah, I've been doing that for years. What do you mean you've been doing that for years? Do you teach people to do this? Do you teach new grads? And they're like, not really, because it's not really something we teach. It's experience. It's all this kind of stuff. And you're going, no, like it's something we can teach. Everybody's got intuition. It's just a matter of how you're using it and how you're bringing it into practice.
Oh, I love that so much. And thank you for bringing that up, right? We walk this path where we're like, okay, scientific validation and what really works.
Yeah.
Why did you call that doctor back? I don't know, because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. So I had to. Right.
Yeah,
And are we
exactly.
teaching grads this? And I love how it opens up with stories that are really relatable, with information that makes it achievable for anybody. Tuning into what does your intuition feel like and how can you support that and bring that forward? And what might you run into and how can you pull from the wisdom of the nurses that you're working
Yeah.
with, because so much of it does come just through experience. The schools do everything they can to try to prepare you for a field that is so diverse.
Oh,
As far flung as I'm like the human body, I like to say we are wildly improbable and miraculous beings. And for one person to hold all of the information to assess someone, ER teams are phenomenal. And a good friend of mine, we studied theater together because as a child, my mom said to me, when you grow up, do anything you want, but if you go into medicine, I'll disown you. So I went into theater. And one of my fellow graduates ended up in nursing, and he was a charge nurse during the pandemic. And we started doing Zoom calls with friends, which has just been fantastic. And we've continued it to this point. And now he has a state representative seat because go nurses who want to change the world. And it was amazing to hear his stories about how he took personal responsibility for these nursing students and graduates who are coming through
yeah.
his team and helping them learn, like you talk about in the book and how you already mentioned in the conversation, the way that people show up in their worst moments and how nurses have to receive that and provide care and move forward. And somehow, hopefully, if you're going to survive in this career, take care of themselves in the process. And that is not taught in schools. We're not
No.
teaching students how to understand, like, where is the sign? One question that came to me as I was going through the book is you talk about three kind of phases of intuition. And I'm curious if you have thoughts about how people can also apply that, not only externally, drawing on your intuition when you're working with patients and in your work, but when it comes to starting to tune into yourself and understanding what you need to restore yourself. Do you feel like those things can go along, or do you feel like tuning into that inner wisdom for what you need is kind of a part?
Yeah, like it's one of those things where a lot of what fuels me and what I'm finding gives me a lot of happiness now was things that like I did back in grade 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 when I was just trying to figure out who the heck I was. So music plays a huge, huge role in my day to day, how I'm identifying. There's actually in the back of the book will be an ER pump up playlist, a playlist of what I listen to all the time when I'm going into work. And it's just songs that kind of hype you up, and it's almost like you're just gearing up for battle a little bit, but you're just, let's do it in a fun way. And you put out there, please let the patients that I see be the ones that I really need to be seen by me, kind of thing. Or people cross my path that really need me per se, hoping in vain that it'll maybe decrease the number of people coming into the ER.
Others can move along, please.
Please. Do you really need to be here? It's one of those things where it reminds me of a time where there wasn't the stress, where I was happy and happy-go-lucky. And was I still bullied? Sure, but it wasn't nearly as bad as previous parts of my career. And even during those worst moments, I remember very much finding 6, 7, 8 songs that brought me back to a place in my body where I felt like me. This is me. This is not tainted by other people's opinions. This is not tainted by nursing school. This is not tainted by bullies at this current time and place. Techno, funk, that kind of thing. Just like anything with a really, really good bass and a beat, like I'm down for. And so it's okay. This is me, and I'm just getting up there and I'm just rocking out. And it's one of those things where it's just turned into a habit, where now it's okay, pump a playlist, we're on our way to work. I would love to listen to audiobooks on my way to work, but for some reason it just doesn't have the same effect as really rocking out and not being afraid of other people seeing you as you're rocking out, because they're never going to see you ever again. And maybe it makes their day brighter because they see me rocking out and they're having a laugh like at my expense, but in the meantime it also improves their mood. So whatever.
That's my personal policy as well.
I'm down for it.
I got you from this corner of things. I'm down in Southern California. I'm your fellow commuter who's jamming in the car. Fellow travelers be damned.
You know that you want to do it. You're limiting yourself by not. Just rock out. Just do it. It's so freeing.
Have you found, so you've got music that gets you into the energy where you can be resilient and you can hold your own space as you're going into work. Do you have a detox playlist after work where it helps you work it out?
Usually, it's bad if it's silence. If it's complete radio silence, oh my God, I was way too overstimulated and the bells kept dinging and I couldn't have it. Like, that's been enough. Usually it's a book on the way home, something that I've gotten into, and I'm like, oh, I'm excited now to listen to this on the way home. It's not uplifting enough because I work straight nights. So I'm like, okay, I need to just chill just a little bit. A lot of the times I'll open up my sunroof and put my hands out, like just one at a time, just be like, let it go. Like, it's not mine. I'm letting it go. Or please take it, because I've had enough and I did my time and I need to clear off, kind of thing.
And I think even the intention is so powerful when you bring your awareness to, I've got stuff I don't need to carry. I'm going to give it to somebody who's got it.
Yes, this is not mine. I understand that it's not mine. And even doing that while at work, because the number of nurses who are also empaths and who are highly sensitive people who also pick up on a lot of it, because a lot of your job, you avoid a lot of harm by being very attuned to what people's body language, their voice, their tone, all this kind of stuff. You pick up real quick. Oh, I don't know if I'm super safe in this spot. I need to be just a little bit extra careful. And it's the same when you've got a family who's suddenly grieving and you can't help but feel empathy towards them and you're getting pulled into it. And you go, okay, no, 2 seconds ago, I was fine. I had my lunch. I was coming up the hallway. Everything was great. And then all of a sudden this trauma comes in and the family's now very upset as they watch us working, their family member. And this isn't mine. So to be very mindful of the fact that, yes, you can be empathetic and compassionate. Try not to lose yourself in it, because if you find yourself losing yourself in it, you're going to take it on as if it's your own, and it's not. It's not your grief, your fear, your anxiety. That's not yours. Just be aware of the fact that, no, I was fine not 2 seconds ago. I was fine. This is very obviously just walking into the situation and feeling all of this going on. So, I can be there for the patients and their family members in this moment, but I need to remember, I need to just let it go afterwards. And the number of us who will cry after something happens, we hold it together for family. And then we read each other also really well. If your colleague is struggling, and if I see somebody struggling in the crowd, I'll be like, okay, do you need a minute? Okay, go have a minute. And so they'll go into the back, they'll cry, they'll splash cold water on their face, kind of thing. We've all done it and we all continue to do it. And it's just that sometimes things hit a little bit too close to home. And so you have to be aware of what's going on around you and how you're feeling to be able just to mitigate all the emotions and pull yourself out if it's becoming too much.
And that's really interesting as you're talking about that, because I 100% believe that nurses are highly intuitive. The spidey senses, as you
Yep.
mentioned earlier, whatever it is that brings your attention to it, and being highly sensitive as to have that intuition makes us so empathetic. And so it feels like a double-edged sword. What makes you wonderful at your career and very nurturing also makes you more predisposed to take that stress more personally. Did you suffer burnout in your career? Obviously, the pandemic really kind of stretched
Yeah.
things.
Even beforehand, was it to the extent of the pandemic? No. And I think the only reason why the pandemic was particularly extra hard for me was because I had a young family. And so there's also that added stress of, oh, now I'm a mom. Now I have to worry about my kids and my kids getting sick and all this kind of stuff. So there's that extra layer of, am I going to be the one to bring this home to them? Are they going to survive? Am I going to survive? Heaven forbid I get somebody else sick was always the number one concern. And so then coming home and worrying about them, it's just, it was just that extra, it was just too much. But looking back, you realize that burnout's not a one and done. People aren't talking about that there's ups and downs and deep downs and high highs. Like it's not a one and done. It is, you were on this roller coaster now, and there will be ups and there will be downs. The key now is to really recognize when you're starting to dip. And so when you notice that you're starting to dip, things aren't giving you as much joy as they used to, you're getting really stressed very easily, you're snapping at colleagues and coworkers and loved ones like really easily. Anything anybody asks you to do, it's, oh my God, really? Like, are you kidding me? Everything is that answer. You can't, there's no, it's from the moment you get there to the moment you leave, and it follows you. So if you can start to realize that's happening sooner, then you can go, okay, now I do need to take a step back and maybe let's have a look at, am I working too much? Am I sleeping well enough? Am I eating properly at all? Am I taking some time to decompress before and after shift? Do I have that option even, or something else at home is also going on that just amplifies everything else? And just trying to keep a pulse on it to be like, okay, where am I today? Like on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, I'm going to throw myself into a ravine. Where am I today? And, okay, it's a 5. That's average. Okay, fine. Like not a huge deal, but just an average day where as soon as you start creeping up towards 8, you're like, oh, okay, maybe we need to like really take a peek at this, maybe take some personal days. Is there anything that's coming up that I'm looking forward to doing? When was the last time I actually did anything for me? Is there anything at home that I can mitigate, that maybe if we can try and get the kids to help clean up a little bit more, or maybe if you've got financially able to bring in the cleaning lady to do stuff, you start looking at things as to, okay, I know my hourly wage. And so can I hire somebody maybe to do something a little bit here, there, and everywhere to take the load off of me? And a lot of that is having conversations with spouses to be like, look, it, mother's mental load is a real thing. I need you to help, and go from there. And a lot of us, the eldest daughter with the extreme hyper independence trauma responses, we don't ask for help. We just go. We're fine. It's great. We're just going to keep on trudging through it. Getting to the point of finally needing medications and saying yes to taking medications, that was new for me. But again, looking back, I should have been on medications a couple of different times through my career when dealing with bullies and hard times and that kind of thing. You know, you start to learn and you go, oh, okay, like I need to sleep, and it needs to be good sleep, and I need to prioritize myself. And so once you start saying it's nobody else's job to make me happy but me, oh man, does the world change.
100.
And some people may then, oh, that's so selfish. Oh my God, I can't, you're putting you first. What about your children? And you're like, do the children want a pissed off mom? Absolutely not. They want a happy mom. What makes mom happy? Makes mom happy is maybe I get up a little bit early. I have my coffee in silence in my destroyed living room kind of thing. And that at least sets the tone for the day. I start the day and everything's calm, cool, and collected. I get to dick around on my phone for however long I want until the children come down, and they're so cute. They're like, mommy, and you cuddle. And you're like, okay, that's a pretty decent start to the day. Okay, we can do things from this way. But somebody once said that discipline is the highest form of self-love. And man, that quote is sticking lately. The discipline to actually get on the treadmill, maybe not run, but maybe just walk and actually move instead of being a couch potato 100% of the time, or putting in the effort to actually make a really decent meal. And it's more for you than for everybody else. And then you go, oh, okay, that's nice then. I love my task triage. So somebody from Imperfect Perfection ended up coming up with a to-do list, but it's a task triage. And so you actually like triage then, especially as an ER nurse, you triage what needs to get done like ASAP, what can wait a day or two, and then what can wait a week or two. And it helps so much with a big brain dump to be like all the things. And then, okay, what actually needs to get done today and what can wait? And that's been huge in being able to organize myself because I'm a little ADHD and a little undiagnosed. So this helps to rein me in from a couple of different angles.
Yes. Thank you for that. There's so much to take away. Folks are going to have to listen to this episode twice because I think real world experience really matters. And somebody like me can sit here and say in a show, self-care is really important and self-love is everything. And you can't do it wrong. Just practice loving yourself, right? Show yourself the care of making a better meal. Like I have time to shop for a better meal, right?
Thanks.
And I get where people are coming from. When you can kind of redistribute that bandwidth, knowing that it's going to benefit you because you've developed the awareness to say, oh, I'm at a 7 or an 8. I got to turn this ship around before we're all going over the falls together. If mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
And we used to live in the falls. The falls are not far from here. So it's just one of those things where it's the constant fight, right? Where, oh my God, I'm just so tired. I really don't have the energy for this. But let's look at the reason why you're so tired. You're staying up late, you're scrolling on your phone, you're not really doing much. You think just doing nothing will help, but in reality, you know that it's not helping anything. And then it makes the mess worse. And then you're worrying more and you're stressed out more because the mess is out of control and all this kind of stuff. It's the same in healthcare and burnout prevention and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to put a lot of weight into the front loading of this. So, very prevention heavy and support heavy in the beginning. And it's costly. It's hella costly. But in reality, it's going to pay out tenfold. What is it? An ounce of prevention, a pound of cure. So if your nurses are happy, you don't need to worry about patient satisfaction scores because they're just going to take care of themselves because the nurses are happy. They will have the extra bandwidth to be a little bit nicer, to be a little bit more understanding, a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more empathetic. It's, when you're down to brass tacks and you're like, I don't have the energy for anything. I just have the energy to do the bare minimum. And we're working short-staffed. Why am I killing myself to push myself beyond what I'm doing right now? So I'm just going to do the absolute minimum and is what it is. And sometimes you can break out of that, but it takes a long time to have lots of really good shifts before you turn around and be like, oh, I'm actually feeling pretty decent today. Okay, let's go in and check the carts and be really thorough with them and go that extra mile for this one patient. And what about this problem solving and doing a bunch of things that way? It's painful in the beginning, but it pays off in the end.
And I think it's easy for me to say, I didn't have my own children. I'm a stepmama. But when people say that, how can you be so selfish to put yourself first? I think it's really important to model for our kids that your health and your happiness matter. Because as you said, nobody else is going to make a priority on your well-being. You have to take that stand for yourself. And would you rather model for your children that burnout is fine and that dysfunctional relationships are expected because work is hard and that's the way it is? That's not what we want our generations to be growing up with. And I don't think it means that we're raising generations that aren't capable of handling hard things. I think they're seeing us develop the tools and recognizing that our happiness and our well-being are important enough that they can help out a little bit more, that you can ask for help and they can step up.
And they're kids. At what point do you finally go, okay, you guys are making a disaster. It's time we start up in the ante. They're 9 and 10 and a half now. Okay, they've got little chore charts. We need to clean up and you need to put away your bags and you need to empty out your lunches. And we're starting to make our own lunches now. God bless. And we're getting to that point because all the food was coming back and it was just show food anyways to show the teachers that, yes, we give you food and you choose not to eat it. It's the show veggies and the show fruits that we all know that the teachers are just like, oh, okay, you've got food, you're choosing not to eat it. You're fine. You're fine at home. But now with them making their lunches, guess what? Now they're actually eating their lunches. And you're like, oh, well, why was I so slow to pick up on just have them do their own lunches? Yes, it took a little bit of back and forth and okay, what do you want to eat? And da, da, da. But this way the lunches actually get eaten. And we're talking about nutrition as we're doing it. Okay, you need one veggie, you need one fruit. Where's your protein? Where's your carb? Da, da, da. We're talking about it. And where's your one sugar? Okay, fine. Like, pick your sugar. We're fine. Let's just go on it. But it's weaning in lessons when I didn't even mean to wean in lessons. But here we are. And you're like, oh, now you're learning to eat.
Life skills are happening
Life
here.
skills. Oh my God. I'm parenting. Look at me go.
Raising good humans over
Just-
there.
One might run a chain gang or a country. We'll see. She's a strong one.
One of the things that I loved in the book is that you take some time to explain breath work because I believe you feel it's very important, as do I.
Love it.
And I think it's very underestimated by people who haven't given it a chance. So, what would you say to people in terms of how that can help you in situations of stress?
Yeah, because I mean, we're running around like idiots 99.9% of the time, right? There's the key thing that I mean, that I've said a million times is there's just no time. You have to tweak the time, right? So you have to make everything work twice as hard for you. So when you're sitting down and charting because you have to, then you can say, okay, here's like a little thing. Okay, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. And even if you're just doing it one time as you're going through, that might just be enough to go, okay, at least I'm back into my body. I'm back into this moment. I'm off of autopilot mode because I've had to force myself to breathe very specifically and be aware about it. And so it's one of those things where you have to be on top of it to cue yourself up. The Fitbits and the Apple Watches are great at cueing you up to get moving and to do your steps, and it cheers you on and all these great things. Sometimes maybe it should also be telling you to breathe. That would be a great thing. But in nursing, you have to carve out those moments. And sometimes if somebody is like screaming at you, maybe that's the time to be doing it. You're listening to what they're saying, but you're already having to be very aware of your emotions and your demeanor because God only knows who's taping you. So then you have to be just very mindful of, okay, this is my stance and I'm being very open and I've got to watch my body language and all this and my tone. And I'm speaking very slowly and very monotone and slow, low sentences to really, you wouldn't believe how many people really respond to just you slow down your speech, you slow down the tone and low and slow. And to be able to do that purposefully when somebody else is freaking out on you, guess who holds all the power? Because if people looking onto that situation go, she's got her stuff together while this person's popping off and they almost look crazier for being so excessive. And you can't help but if you're in that situation, you're picking up on that person being very calm and low, right? Perfect example is kids. Kids in the emergency department, they come in, they're at a 12, they're just losing their marbles. The parents are also losing their marbles. I have to peel them off the ceiling. So mom comes in, we're trying to do the triage, the kids all over the place. And very quickly you learn that if you do the same thing with the kids, oh, hi, and very low and very slow, very methodical movements. You're not rushing to do anything, which is a huge problem for me, but you're very intentional about slow movements and small transitions. And, oh, we're just going to try this thing. And we're only doing one vital sign at a time, being very specific about which way we're going. And as soon as the kid sees that you're calm, the kid calms down. And then guess what? Because the kid's calming down, mom and dad calm down. And then the kid sees mom and dad calm down, so they come down again. And then mom and dad come down again. And and you just keep doing it till you finally get to a place where like, okay, what is going on? What is happening today? Oh my God, they fell off their high chair and they hit their head. Da, 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 and you're like, okay, great. Okay. So, and then you go into your questions and you're finishing your assessment and you're still being methodical about it, but you can pick up the pace a little bit once everybody's calm, because really the parents are looking to the nurse to say, oh my God, if the nurse freaks out, we're going to freak out more because this is obviously an emergency. And then the kid's going to play off both the nurse and the parents. But if the kid has got nobody to play off of, they calm right down. It's great. And it's very easy to do as the third person who hasn't been up all night with that sick kid who's sleep deprived and worried and stressed and anxious, and the kid's screaming and it's a trigger for them and they're out of their minds. So the kid's out of their mind. So this way we calm everybody down. We're like, okay, now what are we up to? What's happened today? And it works so well that I started doing it to adults. And then sure enough, the adults did the same thing. I was like, oh, new life hack unlocked in the ER. Okay. All right. This is what needs to be done. I got it now.
Yeah, energy is amazing. And the power of
Huge.
energy to bring people into that kind of coherence is really phenomenal. I love that.
Oh, it's nuts. It's crazy.
Superpower unlocked. You mentioned one thing stood out for me as I was cruising through the book. You talk about critical thinking, and you talk about your dad would say to you, I can just hear a parent saying this to their child, can't you see the potential for disaster? This is something that should be running in the back of all of our heads.
Yes,
Approaching the
constantly.
well.
This is the biggest life skill I think I've ever learned in my life. And so my mom's a little PO that she didn't make the book because dad made the book. I'm like, listen, dad had a good point, because it was constant with the three of us running around like crazy people. And can't you see the potential for disaster? He'd be pissed off and we're running up and down the stairs and can't you see the potential for disaster? Yeah, I can. I could trip and fall and smack my face and be hurt. Okay. So then you're like, oh, but it took us kind of then looking inside to be like, oh, let's look at this whole scenario and see what's going on with this whole scenario instead of just, la, 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 I just want to run around. And it's been the greatest tool growing up and being very then mindful about what other people are doing and how whole scenarios are playing out and being very aware of whole scenarios, and then take that to nursing. And it just, that mixed with Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will, you put the two of those together and this is the most magical scenario to critically think, because they keep telling you, oh, you need to critically think. What the hell does that even mean? What does that mean? To critically think really just means whatever you're about to do, what's the worst possible thing that could be the outcome? You're giving somebody their blood pressure medication yet, and you haven't checked their blood pressure. Worst case scenario, their blood pressure is already in their boots. You give them their blood pressure medication to lower their blood pressure medication. Then they have no blood pressure, and then their heart stops. That is the worst case scenario. How do we mitigate all of that disaster? You just check the blood pressure before you give the pills. It is stupid easy.
Isn't it great when sometimes it can be stupid easy? Stay ahead of the problem.
It's just staying ahead of the problems. You're looking at your patient, and we give a lot of boluses in the ER. The worst case scenario for somebody getting a bolus, they've got heart failure and you overload them, and then their lungs fill, and then they stop breathing, and then they potentially code. That's worst case scenario. So all you have to do, look at their legs. Are their legs really swollen? Yeah, don't do it. Hold off on the bolus, or give just like half of the bolus or even a quarter of the bolus. So 250 mils, right? One of the little milk cartons, the little small milk cartons, that's all you're giving. Usually that's not going to cause a lot of problems. You throw a liter of fluid into somebody who's already swimming in their own fluids, you're going to have a problem. So just check the legs. Just have a quick peek down there. And if they look a little swollen, you push in. And if you leave indents in their legs, don't do it. But again, that's experience. That's years of doing this. This is potentially, how many people have I accidentally put into overload before? Probably one or two over the years, easily. It's learn from my mistakes. Please do not repeat them. That's critically thinking. It's just preparing for the worst case outcomes. And the real critical thinking part is knowing what the worst case outcomes can be with whatever you're doing.
And then you can prepare. Worst case, best case scenario.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is most likely going to fall in the middle. So there's a little bit of comfort in that. We can get the playing field. Now we've got it all before us. Now we can move forward.
It's just kind of taking the risks, right? There's always going to be risk with whatever you're doing. So just be aware of what's going on. You're going to put a Foley catheter into somebody and it's a female. Unfortunately, Foley catheters, it's really hard on a female to be able to hit the right spot kind of thing. And sure enough, when you're all sterile and you're doing it and you go into vagina instead of urethra, you're like, oh, crap. If you planned ahead, you had an extra catheter ready to rock and roll. And so if you've already got the other catheter ready to rock and roll, you leave the one in the vagina so that, okay, that route is vagina. Now I go up higher. And then sure enough, now you're into urethra and you get urine back, and that's a great day. And you're not giving somebody a urinary tract infection.
And they're not waiting for you to go and get what you needed to
Oh,
have
and
with
you have to take the gloves off and find something and run around. And is this person covered while you're doing this? Oh, are they freezing? Are they with it? Are they gonna just take everything off anyways the second you leave the room because they're not really with it, kind of thing? Just plan ahead. That's ounce of prevention, pound of cure. That's it.
I think 95, 97% of nursing is mitigation, is damage control.
Absolutely. You're mitigating death, you're mitigating medication complications, you're mitigating somebody turning around for the worse, you're mitigating everything. You're playing with blood pressure, you're playing with the heart rate, you're playing with temperature, it's puzzles. And you hate to think about people as puzzles, but sometimes you go, okay, what am I missing? I know that I'm missing something because like the story isn't matching up with what I'm seeing. And I just, I don't know. So a lot of the times I say, especially to new grads, I'm like, people lie to me. 90% of the time, people are lying to me, and they may or may not be aware that they're lying to me. Sometimes they are. That's fine. There's probably an embarrassment factor into that. But sometimes people don't know that they're lying. They just don't remember their medications. They don't remember their past medical history. They don't remember what they've done in the last 12 hours because they've got dementia. You have to operate on the fact that you're always missing something so that you're always looking to correct that, so that you're always kind of on your toes to be like, okay, this isn't going the right way. They're not correcting fast enough. Things aren't turning around fast enough. I'm missing something. I need to keep looking and being on the lookout for sometimes the zebras, because the doctors say when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras, because they don't want you going down rare disease rabbit holes. But every now and again, there's a zebra. And then you get to think about that zebra for the rest of your career.
Well, and I think that's what you so beautifully bring forward in your book, Nursing Intuition. Look for it on Amazon. Help keep this girl visible, because everybody who's in the medical field needs this book. The balance between wisdom and experience and intuition. And knowing that it is a trust that science now has the capacity to verify. How cool is it that science is catching up to these things? And so you've got your sources, you've got practical information in there. It's such a gift for young nurses, grads, students, anybody in the field. Even later on, if you're like, oh yeah, maybe I'm pretty tapped into what's going on. Maybe there's a sixth sense helping me out at work. You're going to get something out of this. Wonderful stories. Your magic story totally moved me. Little tears in my coffee this morning. I'm like,
Oh
oh,
man.
what a beautiful experience. And I think that
And I'm getting
is,
goosebumps.
yeah, nursing just brings that, the grittiest and toughest aspects of life. And then these moments of magic that's like, how could you do something else?
Looking back, like I never chose nursing. I never once dreamed about being a nurse, or I never felt it was a calling. It's just something I fell face first into. And the universe is like, here, you're going to university for biology. And in my second year, I ended up failing the first half of organic chemistry. And I'm going like, oh my God, like I'm a year behind now. Is this really what I want to be doing? I'm not really interested. My marks aren't great, but they're okay. Like this isn't what I want to do. And I happened to have a girlfriend in first year who was in nursing school, and we'd go through her textbooks, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is interesting. This is what I thought I was going to be studying. Like I thought I would be studying people with biology instead of plants, because Lakehead University's got a huge forestry program. So a lot of their material was very plant focused, and I'm a complete crap green thumb. So I'm like, this isn't working. So, took that failure potentially and turned it around to be like, no, this is what I need to be doing. So ended up getting into the 3-year nursing program. And before I graduated, I ended up running into the professor who failed me. And we were in the line for Tim Hortons, and I turned to her. I'm like, I know that you don't remember me. I said, but you failed me in the first half of organic chemistry. She goes, oh, and I'm like, okay. She thinks this is not going to go the right way. And I'm like, I just want to say thank you. thank you so much for failing me. Because had you not, I probably would have gone through with the degree. I probably would have finished it, would have been unhappy, wouldn't have found nursing. Thank you very much for failing me. And so you could see her just go, oh, yeah, sure, that's not a problem. And I'm like, and it's just one of those things where you think you're making the harsh call, you're failing somebody, you're firing somebody, you're having to leave a job, you're having to leave a relationship, all these things that are seen as failures. And then in reality, fast forward 5-10 years, you're going, oh no, that needed to happen because I wasn't listening to all the other signs about what I was supposed to be doing. And so the universe had to like just swift kicked my ass and push me to be like, no, now you really need to make a decision because now you've got no other option. Here you go. Here's your opportunity to correct this. And very thankfully, I ended up listening to it and swapping out.
It's amazing how in hindsight, we can see why everything conspired to bring us to where we are. But boy, when we are in the weeds of it, we're really wondering where we're heading.
100%. And you forget how anxiety filled a day can be. You're having marital troubles, you're having bullying troubles, you've been fired from a job and you're fighting to get your job back, a job that you don't even want to be at because the bully's so bad, but you're fighting to get that job back. And you get the job back and you work there for 5 years, vowing to be the most educated nurse that ever leaves that place. And you may or may not have been, but you wrote a book about it regardless.
And those are the ripples. These are the little pebbles that make the impact that's going to turn the tides. I love it. I'm so grateful you did this work. I'm grateful it started with a little class you took for fun to blow off some steam and do something
and to
silly.
Support a friend.
Yes. You just never know. You just never know.
Never know.
But trust that inner compass to take you to the right places. Jenn, 100%. Thank you so much for joining me in the show. This has been such a treat. We'll have information in the show notes where you can find the book, how you can learn more about Jenn, and hopefully she'll keep on writing and entertaining us with her awesome stories.
As long as I keep working. I can't stop working because then the stories stop. Yeah,
we'll see. Up. Thank you, Jenn. This has been a treat. Take good care.
See you.
Thanks for listening. You'll find all the resources we discussed today online at happifiedlife.com, along with links to subscribe to Happified on your favorite player and a handy search tool so you can search all of our previous episodes. Help us grow by leaving a quick review and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, keep on shining.